Hello, you are listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show and owner of Resilience Occupational Therapy. Last week, we talked with my sensei and my karate instructor, Jeremy Lesniak, about his new dojo here in central Vermont. And this week, we're continuing that conversation a little bit, getting into fighting multiple people at the same time and the psychology behind that, as well as some of the nuanced differences between different types of Japanese martial art. I hope you enjoy. You very clearly made reference to like mainland Japan and Okinawan martial arts a few times over over conversations with you, so I'm curious your distinction.
The culture of Okinawa and the culture of Japan are not the same, even though Okinawa is I think the official term is like prefecture, right? It is part of Japan's territory. And if you look at martial arts as it flowed from Okinawa to Japan, once it hit Japan, it became a bit more regimented. And that was in part because the effort was to get it taught in public schools. So it needed to be very standardized, very rigid in the way that, the Japan educational system handles things. And there is absolutely some good in that. But it does not leave as much opportunity for nuance. And I think nuance is really important. I think one of the best parts of martial arts is when you start to make decisions for yourself, right? My goal as an instructor is to give you material and to guide you in your development. But ultimately, I want every one of my students to progress past me. And the only way they can do that is to be the best version of themselves as a martial artist. Because if you're trying to be me, nobody's going to be better at me than me. I'm me. You can't be me. You got to be you. And, I think that's a really important logical understanding. And how do you become you versus me? Well, you have to do some things differently.
So you feel like go ahead. So you feel like Okinawan karate leaves more room for that?
Yes.
And what is that called again? Just because I don't know my karate terms. Does an Okinawan karate have a specific name?
There are a variety of styles, right? Okay. I mentioned Ishinryu as one of the styles. Ishinryu, Shorinryu, Shidoru, Weichi-ryu. I feel like there's one more that I'm missing. There's like a core set of them that were launched. I'm not a martial arts historian. I don't pretend to be. I know my history. But yes, now I've never been to Okinawa. I've never trained in Okinawa. I don't think I've trained with any folks who came over from Okinawa to teach. So I can't speak to this. But in talking to other people, in conversations I've had for my podcast, in training in Okinawan lineages versus Japanese lineages, there does seem to be a bit more opportunity for individualization, for that space, that nuance within Okinawan traditions versus Japanese traditions.
And I find it very interesting. It may be a false parallel, and that Okinawa is known as a blue zone, and blue zone being the most huge population of people who live over 100. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's hard to imagine that their physical activity culture isn't
they're
a portion of that.
They're fishing into their 80s and 90s over there. I mean, it's just they do their thing. Yeah. I've heard it's a really cool spot. I want to go someday. It's not top on my list, but I'd like to visit.
So one of the things I've been thinking about is the protecting people around you that I find is not covered in any of the martial arts training I've done. And the only times where I feel like I've applied martial arts has been with that intention. And it was interesting to hold space as like this of mine. The only martial time I was in, I think it was Toronto, and there's some guys and some women in the group, and the guys are behaving weird to women up above and further out, and I sort of just redirected my wife, and I sort of drew the guy's attention in, and I didn't necessarily do it as non-confrontational as I would have liked, and sort of resulted in shifting the circumstance.
Yeah.
But I felt like that piece of protecting other people is not really taught, and I just was curious what your thoughts on that.
It doesn't happen in every school. I don't know if I'm going to say it doesn't happen in most schools, because it certainly does happen in at least some. This idea of how do you protect others around you? How do you protect yourself when you are, let's say, carrying a baby? There's a scenario that people don't want to think about. How do you and your friend protect each other when you're in a group violence situation, right? Like, these are all much more complex dynamics. Violence that is one-on-one, pretty easy to understand. Oh, you're trying to harm me. I need to make sure you don't harm me. But what if you and your friend are trying to harm me? I need to worry about, okay, I need to keep you from harming me, and I need to keep you from harming me. And if I can't run away, that means I probably need to harm you enough that you leave me alone. But when I pay attention to you, I need to make sure I'm not giving this other person the opportunity to make harming me even easier, right? So the complexity goes up rapidly. And those scenarios are generally reserved for people who can handle that complexity, meaning people who've been training longer and have higher rank within a martial arts system.
And I've appreciated that. I feel like some of you, in a playful way, have been introducing some of that into the curriculum.
Yeah. A lot of the drills that we're doing are the convergence of many, many things simultaneously. Because really it comes down to awareness, right? Whether I'm trying to prevent an altercation, survive an altercation, protect someone else from an altercation, awareness is my primary tool in assessing what's going on. I have to know what's going on. And so what you've been alluding to, there's a drill that we do that it's really just about awareness. It's a bunch of really slow engagement of the entire class where there are no teams, and everybody's laughing and giggling, and their hands and feet all over the place. And not one person's ever even been remotely injured from doing this drill. But spoiler alert, the main thing I'm teaching you there is awareness. If you have to figure out where 20 hands and 20 feet are, or honestly, quite a few more than that, when you only have to worry about 2, becomes a lot easier. Right? We're overtraining. We're training in that discomfort space, but we're doing it safely.
You've been listening to Resilience Radio. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you would like to hear more interviews, subscribe via the podcatcher of your choice and get a new interview every week. The music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. You can check the show notes for full credits on that. I hope you enjoyed listening. Take care.